So let me invite our panel up here. We have with us the Senior Vice President for Global Energy, S&P Global Commodities Insight, Carlos Pascual, is with us here. Carlos, please join us. I'm going to put you sitting right here. Helima Croft joins us, the Managing Director and Head of... That's my seat. Sorry. Helima Croft, come on guys, it's afternoon. Give her a big clap here. Managing Director, Global Commodity Strategy, RBC Capital. His Excellency Osama Mobarez from the European Mediterranean Gas Forum. He is the Secretary General. We're delighted to have him with us. And Paddy Padmanathan, the Vice Chairman and CEO, Aqua Power. Paddy, lovely to see you. So a great panel here, as I said, who have... They might not have all the answers, but they're certainly going to have plenty of information that is going to get you thinking, without a doubt. And Carlos, if I might start with you. We've been hearing a lot about the situation in Russia and, you know, the consequences thereof in terms of what's happening with the state of the energy market. And really, we need to be looking at, without a doubt, I think the agreement is and the consensus, we have to decarbonize. There is no argument about that. But gas was meant to be very much part of the solution. How do you see the politics of the European energy transition playing out now, given the situation, when we look ahead to this year and possibly beyond?
I think one of the things that Dita Juhl-Jurgensen really underscored is that there's absolute clarity that the crisis in Europe has accelerated the commitment to energy transition, and that this is fundamentally necessary to end dependence on Russian oil and gas. But at the same time, there's a reality that you have to survive. Your economy has to run, industry has to function, people have to have jobs. And to be able to do that, it's necessary to have access to the fundamental fuels that are critical for that to happen. And in that, what we've seen over and over again today in so many panels is the critical role of gas to be able to supply those economies. If we look today at what is the critical fuel at the crisis of Europe, it is natural gas. And I think that one of the lessons that we have to draw from this is that Europe is forced into this situation of making these adjustments in an incredibly short period of time because of the war. But the rest of the world is going to have to deal with these issues over a period of time. And I think that one of the issues is that, yes, you can have a commitment to fundamental change, but you have to understand how to manage it, how to sustain it, that gas is a critical fuel that's complementary to those goals, not necessarily one that is opposed to it.
Helima, continue on that theme. I mean, we're looking at what's happening in Russia. The Western disruption, without a doubt, caused by going on there in terms of energy supplies. So what can we expect? I mean, you know, we've no end in sight. Somebody would wish that we could put a date, put an end to this, but you know, in that realm of uncertainty, so to speak, where are we struggling right now?
No, I think that, you know, compared to when we all assembled in March, there was such deep concern about what was coming in terms of supply disruptions and fears about what if Russia cut off gas supplies to Europe. I remember debates about, could Europe, you know, start imposing sanctions on Russian energy? Would it be too painful for Europe? And Russia sort of made that choice for Europe because Russia decided to cut off gas supplies to Europe. And so the question is now, is there anything, I would say from looking at the market standpoint, is the worst behind us? Or are there more disruptions to come? I mean, obviously there's been a lot of conversation about the fact that Europe has built supply, I mean, storage, in large part because they had Russian gas. They've also been helped because of a mild winter. So what does next winter look like with this war continuing? But I also think that we have to watch Russian action. I mean, the Russians have made a lot of recent threats in response to the price caps. They have said they will cut off any country that pays at the cap, that participates in the plan. And for now, there has not been yet any clear signs of Russia carrying through with those threats to disrupt particularly oil supplies because of the price cap. But I don't think we can be necessarily sure that we're not going to see further Russian action on energy. And I don't know if we're going to debate what happened with that Nord Stream pipeline, but I do think we have to be concerned about additional disruption in terms of infrastructure going forward.
Osama, when we look at the work that you're doing in the East Mediterranean Gas Forum, again, Europe is looking for alternative sources of gas. We've seen a crisis point that we're probably still within the midst of, but you know, what can the EMGF actually do to perhaps, you know, help alleviate this?
Thank you, Eithne. So as Carlos has been saying, I think gas is playing a significant role, especially in these turbulent times. And actually the main objective of the EMGF was to develop the stranded gas in the region to diversify supplies, and the potential market or the most close market is Europe. And I think we have seen in 2022 more gas coming from the East Med going to Europe. And the EMGF has facilitated the signing of a trilateral MOU between Egypt, Israel, and the EU that with the main objective, how can we accelerate gas supplies from the East Med to Europe? And I think this has been done through different options. Already gas has been flowing before 2022, but I think what happened since February 2022 accelerated several development of gas fields and also accelerated a lot of potential infrastructure projects. And I think this is what we are working on with the different stakeholders.
Now, Paddy, we've got some members on our panel here that clearly see gas as the way forward. But you know, our topic is it's wider than this, and we're looking at all forms of energy. But when you look at the present energy architecture, I suppose, at the moment, and we need to focus on energy security, we need to decarbonize. Can we actually, given what's going on right now, can we do both?
I think we are seeing that we are able to do both. That's the starting point, right? So I think the numbers are done. What is seen in 2022 was that there was more renewable energy built than in any other year before. So right the way through the crisis, right the way through all this tragedy, we're getting on with what we need to do. And I think right in all the countries that we operate in, the only conversation everybody wants to have is how much more renewable energy can you implement, how fast can you do that? So I think it's recognized that energy security comes complete together with renewable energy. It is renewable energy that in the medium to long term that is going to provide the energy security, and thank goodness technology continues to provide the pathway. Even storage solutions are getting better and better and better. We are learning how to interconnect grids and making the grids more resilient and reduce the need for storage through grid storage. So I think there's a lot of pointers that are showing the way forward. And the last on that one I'll point out to you is that we continue to underestimate human resilience and human capacity. Look at Ukrainians. I mean, you know, they're showing us the way. And look at what Europe is doing right now. And exactly like what happened post the energy crisis way back, the numbers are being done today. In Germany, they have managed to cut energy consumption by 20%. And what is the impact of that? 1% reduction in GDP, but 20% reduction in the last 6 months of energy consumption. So they're learning very quickly and how to reduce how to become more efficient, how to reduce consumption. And that reduction is not going to go back. So I think we are learning to, and that also is going to feed into the growth of renewables. We're going to be able to push more renewables in faster in order to supply that continuing to reduce.
But people need focus and direction, and I think you know that was pretty much delivered to them in Germany, saying you will do this, and it's you know once that policy almost is put in place, then people will follow. When they don't know what to do, then they don't do anything. So
agree with you, but I think now everybody does know what to
Yes.
do, right? What they have to do. There are no choices anymore. We have to accelerate.
a lot of areas around the world impacting what's going on. But Helima, stay with us for a moment on Russia, and I want to talk to you about China and other areas later. Looking at the possibilities of what situation might happen, and I suppose the determination by Russia to sort of keep this situation here. But do you see in your studies any possibility of a negotiated settlement, for Ukraine? It doesn't look like that's ever going to happen, is it? And what will the energy impact be either way?
No, I think this is clearly right now, again, I always think about when we were together in March. People were talking about the need for this war to come to an end soon, and I think everyone is preparing now for a multi-year war. And what does that mean? We had speakers this morning saying that Europeans are going to have to Russia will have to return to Europe in some form in terms of a supplier. And the question is, if the current regime stays in place in Russia, is there any prospect of the return of Russian gas to Europe if Vladimir Putin is still in charge of Russia? So I think that's a clear question. And again, I think about next winter. I think there is now almost a complacency setting into the market when people are saying, the worst is over. Russia has already cut gas to Europe. What more can they do? But what are the implications of Europe going without Russian gas next winter? If we have colder weather, speakers have talked about the fact that if you had flipped the weather dynamics of the United States and Europe, the kind of situation Europe would be in. And even on the oil side, I think it's a really important question to think about the oil markets over the next few years, because we are back to a situation where, with the China reopening, we are looking at a potential shortage of supply. And the questions about if we get into, Amos was asked this morning when Hadley asked if we get back to 100 plus, how is the Biden administration going to, what tools are in the toolkit? And they talk about the SPR, but I don't think anyone's really anticipating another 180 million barrel a day release. So you're back to the sort of traditional energy diplomacy. I wish we had an OPEC representative with us, because that is the call that's going to probably be made again to Riyadh and the United Arab Emirates.
In fact, just when we look at the situation in Europe right now, and the fact that the longer this goes on, there's an opportunity to actually really push. And you've talked about the progress that's already been made in renewables in Europe. So maybe by the time that gas might come back in the market, maybe they don't need it from Russia ever again because they've moved forward. Do you foresee something like that actually happening?
I do. I really do. I think we continue to underestimate how quickly you're going to deliver the alternatives and how quickly you're going to become more efficient. And it's happening around us. So it's not hope, it's real reality that is happening. And the other thing is, don't forget, take the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, within the next 6 to 7 years, will shut down 40 gigawatts of oil-fired power plants in the country. So it frees up 1.5 million barrels per day of internal consumption. So all of a sudden, we've got 1.5 million additional barrels, if that is needed. So, and you're going to see that everywhere. And that's the oil kingdom doing it, okay? Oil capital. So I think you will start to see renewables coming in very fast as we go forward.
But I think it's really important to remember in the Repower EU patent or strategy, 25% of that gap proposed by the EU is going to be filled by renewable hydrogen, which is unlikely to be there by 2030. Another 30% was by LNG supplies coming into the country, a relatively small portion for renewable energy. My point is that gas in some way, whether it's renewable or not, is making up still 50% of that gas. Let's be realistic. I completely agree with Paddy that there is a path on renewable energy. It has to be pursued. It's fundamental, but it is going to take time. And deploying it is going to take time. Even getting the permits, land in Europe is scarce, right? And so this is going to take a bit of time. And in the meantime, how do you fill that? And the EU's plan is renewable hydrogen, which is going to be tough to get, and more LNG. So let's be clear about it.
Osama, what's being done, do you think, to speed up, energy security, energy transition, climate action? All of this has to be happening in parallel.
Yes, I think the starting point is that we need to think about energy security and energy transition as not enemies, but actually that we need to believe that they can go together. Yes, renewables has been developing very fast, and it is going to play a significant role, but I also agree with what Carlos said. This will need time. We need to be realistic. We need to put some plans. We heard this morning a lot of talk about this. We need to put plans that are implementable. This means that we will still need some oil and gas, maybe gas being the least carbon fossil fuel. But what we need to do, how can we produce this gas in a more responsible way? How can we decarbonize this gas along the whole value chain, whether producing gas, transporting it, liquefying it, and regasifying it? And I think this is what we are trying to do at the EMGF. We're trying to strike the right balance between energy security and energy decarbonization, or energy transition. We have been, through 2022, we have been developing a decarbonization initiative for the East Mediterranean gas. And we have been doing this in collaboration between the governments, the private sector, and also the other technology providers. And we have launched this initiative during COP27 back in Sharm el-Sheikh. And I think what we're working on now is how can we accelerate this so that we can, in COP28, we can report the progress. And I believe there are a lot of quick wins. These are not just long-term plans, because talking about energy efficiency, talking about methane fugitive emission abatement, so there are a lot of things that we can do that does not need a lot of investment, and their impact is quite significant.
Can I talk about China, if I can, Carlos? And we heard General Jones really put out cautionary tales, and maybe you'll come in on this, Helima, as well. But the US-China relations, how do you expect that to play out when it comes to the global energy and indeed the climate agenda in years to come?
Well, the tension between the United States and China is probably the single greatest global security threat that we face today. Wow. And it's going to become more tense as time goes on, and there are going to be elections in 2024. There are Taiwan elections in 2024. So we can imagine that this environment is actually going to get even harder as we go. But there's another aspect to this which is also important to remember, that's part of that tension. And part of the competition between the United States and China is who can provide global leadership in the economy in the world that's headed to net zero. And China was the first country to actually recognize this. They've been investing more in renewable energy than any country in the world. 2 or 3 times the United States, 2 or 3 times the amount in China. They're not doing it because of concern about climate change. Yes, pollution is an issue. They're doing it because of security issues. They're concerned about the Strait of Hormuz. They're concerned about the security of their supply. On the other side, you have the United States, and one of the issues with the Biden administration coming in and talking about China, what was its strategy? It was, we need, as the United States, to be able to invest in the capacity to produce renewable energies to compete in a world where leadership is going to be defined by who can most effectively supply global leadership in that context. Interesting point here. For both the United States and China, the issues of investing in renewable energy and energy transition is not just a climate issue. It's a national security issue. And we need to pay attention to that because, yes, there are going to be ups and downs and volatilities about the course of policies on climate change, but that energy security aspect, or the global security and the economic security aspects of it, that's not going to change. And that's going to be a consistent force that's going to keep pulling the movement and the investment toward renewables over a period of time for political and security purposes.
Helima.
No, I would just add on to that, there had been so much discussion about the sort of diminishing footprint of the United States in this region, about the fact that China was becoming ascendant, discussion about Russia having increasing, position in this region as the US was seen as shifting its focus. And I actually think that this cooperation on climate, we talked about the PACE initiative, Net Zero Producers Forum, we think about John Kerry sitting next to Dr. Sultan Al-Jaber, the close relationship that has been forged on climate. I think that has actually brought the United States sort of back. The idea that we're exiting, I think, is actually being in decline because of this partnership on energy. It's been one of the sort of solid diplomatic partnerships between the United States and the region.
Paddy, let me bring you in on this, because China's, I see the national security issue, but the rest of the world maybe used to think they should depend on them for the raw material, or not the raw material, but for actually some of the areas, the products necessary, but that's not necessarily many other people are producing right now.
Yeah, correct. So, first of all, the competitive tension, please don't get this wrong, is good news for climate. Why? Because it is accelerating investment in both places. And let's not forget, I think we think, so there is a pie, and we think, oh, gee, we now need to somehow take a bigger piece of this pie. No, the pie needs to be increased by 10 times if we're going to achieve the climate agenda. So guess what? Neither of them are going to grow it as fast as we need it to grow. So we do desperately need China to invest a hell of a lot more in capacity. And we desperately need the United States to be investing a hell of a lot more. And we need Europe, we need everybody to be investing a lot more. So there is a hell of a lot of space. So I don't really see why we get so excited about fighting for this competitive tension. The issue is around the controlling of components or controlling of metals, access to the raw materials. Okay? Yes, so China has taken the leadership. So does it mean that they have got all the lithium mines in the world? No. All it means is that they were foresighted enough to take on the easy ones, and they have got their hands on it. Rapidly, the world is exploring for more lithium mines, and there will be more investments. I think all we have done is opened our minds. Now we need to just follow through. So it's time for us to act, not continue to get so excited about that fight.
Helima, I don't think you agree on that one. But
Oh, no, sorry, I wasn't even trying to come in on that, but.
But also, I mean, when we look at the Chinese situation, will they be able to have enough energy for themselves, or will they still need to import when we're in a cleaner, greener world? What do you think, Carlos?
Well, look, the transition is going to take a long time. China is the biggest importer of hydrocarbons in the entire world. For them to get out of that quickly is going to take time. When they've had shortages, they've imported coal. So I don't think we should have any kind of illusion that China is going to quickly get out of the importation of hydrocarbons.
No, I mean, that's obviously, again, when we think about the policy challenges that Biden administration is going to face, I mean, they've made it very clear that they are committed to ensuring low-cost energy for U.S. consumers as well, in terms of look at the focus on trying to keep retail gasoline prices low. And so I do think that this issue about China and Chinese demand is going to be, I mean, if it coming back this year and we see a return to higher energy costs at home, I mean, that is also going to be sort of an energy security in terms of economy challenge for this administration.
Please, if there are any questions, let's get them in before the last few minutes when everybody tends to get excited. So please let me know if there are any questions that you'd like to direct to any members of our panel. We still have about 20 minutes left. One of the things I want to talk about, Osama, and maybe several of you will all come in on this, is the idea that everybody is talking about a just transition, the possibility, or at the minute, the lack of possibility of a just transition, that we really need to be looking at that. When you look at the countries involved in the East Med Gas Forum, certainly you'll be in a position to help regionally as well. How important is it? I mean, is it up there top of your agenda, or is it on the agenda?
Definitely it is. As I was saying, that we need to reconcile energy transition and energy security. And I think we need to think about energy transition as not just one energy transition, it's energy transitions. Depending on where you are, where we're talking about, not just regionally, but the level of development, the level of the energy mix that is there. So we need to cater to a lot of elements when we're talking about energy transition. We cannot talk, for instance, if we're talking about Africa, that an energy transition for Africa does not really fit other countries. Or if you're talking about Europe, this would not fit Africa. And I think that this has been very obvious in COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh. And I think one of the good things about this is that it has been an inclusive COP, and also it has been focusing on implementation. Because a lot of pledges, a lot of promises has been made along the past 26 COPs. And I think now it's time that we really implement and take actions to our promises. And again, one of the good things is during COP27 is that for the first time, we have a decarbonization day, We have the oil and gas and the hard-to-abate industries on the table. That's why it is an inclusive COP. And they are being not just part of the problem, but they're being addressed as part of the solution. And I'm sure that this will continue during COP28 here in the United Arab Emirates. So I think it's time that we take real actions.
Paddy, what do you say to some of the governments, I suppose, in Africa? And we've heard it from many of the ministers there when we look at the concept of a just transition. And they're basically saying, you know, the rules should be different for us because we're not the big polluters and we didn't cause, you know, the big problems. So therefore, give us more time. Let us continue to invest in our hydrocarbons and our gas and oil because that's what we have and that's all that will lead our economies. How do you go and talk to these governments and convince them to think otherwise?
So one of the things that I think, look, there's no reason to blame anyone on this because the costs have moved so fast. Just in the last few years, renewable energy costs have come down so phenomenally low. Even today, with the inflationary environment, with the rising interest rates, renewable energy, we are able to deliver renewable energy for 3 cents per kilowatt hour. Okay, we were able to almost do it at 2 cents 1 year ago, 18 months ago, but now it's 3 cents. Big deal. Fossil fuel-based energy is 8 cents, 10 cents, 14 cents in some of these countries. So I think one of the things that I think is not being understood, we talk about transition, by the way. For much of Africa, there is nothing to transition. They don't have energy. So what are you transitioning? We just focus on transition just because of South Africa, a whole bunch of coal miners. Sorry. So here, all that we need to do is to make sure that we are able to show and deliver energy fast, widen access, allow them, the economies to grow. That's the first part. The second part is, I think the other issue is we turn around and say, okay, you know, what can governments do? What can you do? No, what we as private sector also need to understand, and what certainly the multilateral should be leading it, but okay, they've lost it. So I think it's up to the private sector to lead it, is to relook at the risk around this energy. When we were delivering energy to difficult places at $300 per megawatt hour, $400 per megawatt hour, of course the risk was very high. They couldn't do anything with that sort of very high-priced energy other than just use it for basic survival. With where technology is, we are able to deliver this energy at $50, $60. At that price, the risk is very different because they can take that energy at that low price and they can use it for economic value creation, grow and multiply. So I think we are yet to embrace and understand that all those sort of betas and gammas that we throw into risk-weighted evaluations, nonsense. We need to completely rethink this. We need to reevaluate the real risk around these investments. They don't need to attract 500 and 600 basis points premiums. So that's one of the challenges I think that we need to embrace as we go forward. So, but that's what we should be doing.
But they might argue, too, that they have oil and gas that they can export. So therefore, in terms of their economic growth.
How much of investment do you need for the oil and gas? And how long does it take? For you to invest in an oil and gas field and bring it online, it's 5 to 10 years. Look at what's going on in Mozambique. 15 years, 20 years, nothing happens. Renewable energy can be deployed very fast. And please, people need to follow through the detail. The renewable energy investment the cost is low compared to that capex investment that goes into, and you're putting all this capex investment in a rapidly changing technological environment where you're betting that you're going to get this capex investment. When you invest in an oil and gas field, you're expecting the return over 15 to 25 years, minimum. Well, you know, in today's world, the energy solutions are changing so fast. You really want to take that bet?
Helima, if you can come in on this, and also maybe relate this to OPEC production, because many of the OPEC members are from, you know, the African countries as well. While you're talking about that, can we please get a microphone here to this gentleman, and when Helima finishes, I'm going to come to you, sir. So let Helima take this question second on here. Lovely, thank you so much. Just hold it a moment. Helima, please address this.
No, I mean, I certainly think this is one of the big debates, but a number of, African nations, when they come to these forums, I mean, they certainly, for all the, yes, they want to develop renewables, but, they also do want to be able to develop their, hydrocarbon assets. I mean, they do say they would like to have the ability to bring, their gas and their oil out of the ground. I mean, this is something where it is a big debate, where African nations say they should have the right to develop these hydrocarbons. They should have the right to get the revenue from them. And that is the challenge in these conversations that you have with these leaders. I mean, you can say this is your way forward, but they also say that we should have the ability to develop this a really important source of revenue and have the sort of cheapest and most reliable supply to lift millions of people out of poverty. And I think the other issue, though, on Africa that we have to focus on when we think about the development of renewables, is security of supply as well. We talk about the DRC. We talk about the need to, develop and obtain cobalt from these countries and other critical minerals. Many of the questions that we had around oil and gas development, I think we're going to see in terms of license to operate around critical minerals as well. Like, what is the framework that's going to be put in place in terms of labor standards, in terms of environmental standards? And so I think that is going to be, we talk about critical minerals. I mean, what are the potential risks that we could see disruptions in supply because of governance challenges in these countries?
Can I take the question from
Yeah,
the gentleman?
please,
But I
and then
do want you to comment on this, Carlos, please. Sir, let us know who you are, please. And
Yeah, I'm Amadou Hott, Special Envoy of the President of the African Development Bank
Good.
for the Alliance for Green Infrastructure. 4 months ago, I left the government of Senegal. I was the Minister of Economy for 3.5 years. Just to agree with Paddy on one point, technology for renewable has come down drastically. You can get 3 cents, but that 3 cents is good, but you need to add storage so you can compare to the 8 cents of gas. But still, it's very cheap. So I agree. African countries, we need to exploit our gas if we can find a buyer. So long as you can export your gas, get the money, reinvest in your economy, it makes sense. But for the use at home, if I can get cheaper renewable energy, it makes more sense for me to use renewable energy because the impact is better for everybody. But if I have it on the ground, I want to export it, get the money. However, renewable energy alone is not enough for our electricity, for our energy needs. Because to industrialize, you need more than renewable energy. One can say that you can convert into green hydrogen and use that to industrialize, but you're not there yet. It's still expensive. I know there are people who are very optimistic about it, but it may take some time. But for us, in any case, we have to take responsibility and know that it's not because that others have polluted that we have to pollute. If we can have an alternative technology, yes, let's get it. But if it is expensive, those who have polluted have to put the cheap money, who benefited from it and created wealth, massive wealth, need to really respect their engagement. They said they will put $100 billion a year, but we are far from there. So I'm happy to not pollute anymore, but give me the money to use cheap technology, to make the technology cheaper, to make my tariff cheaper. It's not fair that I pay a higher cost of energy, okay, and I have not polluted in the past. Give me the cheap money so I can make it cheaper. So concessional financing. But lastly, reforms of...
Do you have a question for any of my panel?
That was a comment.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Paddy, do you want to come back quickly on that? I'm coming to Carlos immediately
Look, I
afterwards.
entirely agree with what Amadou just now said. No question whatsoever. The only thing that I would say to everyone is that, look, I am willing to take this entire audience to the most expensive dinner that they want in 5 years' time. Because I can assure you that the rate at which the cost of green hydrogen is coming down, producing green hydrogen is coming down, is the cost of investing in new gas fields and oil fields in Africa versus the cost at which renewable energy and green hydrogen is going to come down are going to be uncomparable. So renewable energy and green hydrogen is going to win, and it's going to win way faster 10 years ago when I said we would end up with 1 cent per kilowatt hour for solar energy, 10 years ago.
Nobody believed you then, did they?
No, they said I was a stupid fool. Yes, absolutely stupid fool. No, never. What happened
Look at
today?
it now, yeah.
We ended up with okay, we didn't get to 1.04 cents. I have a contract in Saudi Arabia that we're delivering 1.04 cents per kilowatt hour. Okay, inflation and interest rates have started to creep up a little bit, so that 1.04 cents, shocking, is going to be 1.5 cents today. The comparative alternatives, even with storage, is nothing compared to these kind of numbers.
Carlos, how do we, I mean, that north-south divide, which clearly is with us at the moment, how do we stop that getting worse?
Look, I think, first of all, we've got to think about the numbers. There are 3.5 billion people in the world that don't have access to reliable power. Population is going to grow by another 2 billion people. Somehow we need to be able to fill that gap. Renewable energy is certainly going to be absolutely critical to it. But then the question becomes, how does it get financed and over what period of time? And one of the things that you've rightly outlined is that there's a need for multiple sources of energy, because in the end it becomes a question of whether the African continent and other parts of the world that don't have access to energy are so excluded from global economic growth that the divide that we have today between North and South is continuing to be able to grow. One of the things that we've been talking about is revamping the multilateral institutions and a number of other things. But a fundamental point here, and let's just bring this back to a very basic issue. What's the cost of capital to borrow in a developing country? Especially when you're building renewable energy, that you have to have all the capital costs up front. And I don't know what your experience has been, but in African countries, what I've seen is that you're looking at a cost of capital that could be 15 to 20%. When you compare that to the cost in let's say, in Europe and the United States before the pandemic, when you can issue a green bond, NL issued a green bond in the United States before the pandemic at a 0 coupon. There's no way that that will happen in the developing world.
So that's what we need to focus on.
Yes.
We need to focus on those issues, but the point is that as we think about this restructuring, we need to have something which is fundamentally looking at not just the multilateral development banks, but how they engage with private capital, how you lower the cost of that private capital, how you address questions of risk, and in the meantime, what do you say to African countries? By the way, you have gas. You can sell it to France, but you shouldn't use it. All right? I mean, I'm just trying to, I know, Paddy, I'm being extreme.
Sorry, Carlos.
But I'm just trying to put some parameters about how we think about it.
Yeah, but Carlos, let's not forget the fact that you sort of said that very fast. Huh? So for that oil and gas development, guess what at price the capital is going to come in at? You really think that capital is going to come in at a cheaper price? It's still going to be the same very high capex, huh? And very high capital, that interest cost.
What I would just say is that part of the argument is whether you can have international partners that are coming in, financing the cost of that capital, using their balance sheet, when you have Total and BP and whomever else it is, that's going to be a different cost of capital than if the country is financing that off their balance sheet. So I'm not arguing against renewable energy, but I'm saying that in this transitional process, let's be realistic about what's needed, how to bring the resources in, and be able to address the interim needs that are there.
And also, let me just bring it back to, you know, we're talking about energy inflection point, reliable supply in a moment of crisis. And I think we're looking at the energy transition, but we're also looking at what's going on at the moment. We haven't talked a whole lot about our friends at OPEC. And, you know, let me bring this back to you, Helima. You know, they've always, and they want to be seen as that reliable supplier, be it at a time of crisis or not. They've taken, you know, 2 million barrels off the market to help stabilize, as they said they would do. And we look at, you know, how that is playing out. The prices are not as high as they were if they've come down. But where can they have the impact at the moment? And what do they need to be doing during the transition?
No, I mean, again, we thought about in March when we met last time, I mean, there were real concerns that you would see significant Russian supply disruptions. And the sanctions to date have largely, because of price caps, kept Russian oil on the market. And the question is, as we go forward, you talk about OPEC, Eithne's looking out for questions. When we think about OPEC going forward, if we do have, a significant run-up in oil prices, OPEC will once again be called upon to put more barrels on the market, and that is going to be a significant diplomatic ask. If we have a China reopening, if we have, even if we don't have the price caps causing major Russian supply disruptions, Russian production is going to come down. If you have this reopening, you're going to have higher prices, and we are not likely to have another significant SPR release. So OPEC, at least on the oil side, remains the only game in town. And within OPEC, it's only Saudi Arabia and UAE that are the two countries that probably have any significant spare capacity to cool this off. And so I don't think we're out of the woods in any way. I think that prices have been muted because of the SPR release, because of recession concerns, but if we do have a China reopening and we do have a priority of the United States in terms of policy to continue to try to provide low-cost retail gasoline to US consumers, the only thing you can probably do is continue to make the ask of OPEC, and whether they pick up the phone will be hugely important in terms of the trajectory of prices.
Stay quickly with this on the geopolitical side, and I'll take a question from Fuad in just a moment. The production from another OPEC member, from Iran, and the situation at Israel at the moment. What's
I mean, again, I think that is the underrated risk story that we should be paying attention to right now. We're so focused on, which you should be, on the Russia-Ukraine war. We have Iran continuing to make significant progress on their nuclear program. You continue to have a crackdown on dissidents in that country. You have a very hawkish government in Israel that has promised to put Iran at the top of the agenda. And I think that this could be a potential crisis point that we could be seeing. I mean, if Iran does not come back into negotiations, if they break down, which they seem to have broken down, and they're pushing ahead with their program, at some point, people say you're either going to live with Iran being a nuclear power, or you potentially have countries talking about taking action to stop that. So I think this could be the crisis that we're not focused on.
And one to keep in mind. Question for it, we've got 4 minutes left, so I'm going to also add a little caveat on your question. I hope it's one that will be the sort of closing question that they can all have some big words of warning or wisdom with us.
Actually, my name is Hussein Fuad El-Gazawi, Senior Energy and Industry Consultant with Links. Just a comment and question to Osama and expand it to everybody. I actually agree with all the comments. You can accelerate oil and gas. I'm coming from oil and gas background.
Hold it directly, like a rock star.
28 months, Zohr field, from finding gas to production, and we had no facility. So you can do it in short time when wells and needed. Mr. Osama, East Mediterranean Gas Forum, I think it's a good example between production countries, consumed country, transition country. How can we transfer that to energy in general, especially in Africa? We have solar, we have wind with the renewables, and having even probably more countries involved in that. So East Mediterranean Energy Forum, I mean, if you can share with us. Thank you.
Okay, do you want to quickly ask something, and then they're going to give their answers on this? We have 3 minutes left, so make your question the 22 seconds element,
my name is
please.
Mustafa from the Ministry of Energy and Petroleum in Sudan. I want to recall back the discussion between Mr. Carlo and Mr. Paddy regarding renewables. In Sudan, for example, we have a lack of access for funding for renewable energy projects. Like when you said it is only 1 cent in Saudi Arabia, so they have the access for such like investment facility. But here we are struggling still to develop our own oil and gas resources due to politics, for example, being under sanction for a very long time. So in this case, what would be the solution for countries like Sudan? Have huge hydrocarbons, and also they have plenty of renewables. Like as you may know, that Sudan have vast lands and sun all of the year. But also this very struggling point for us.
Okay.
To plan.
Now we've literally got just not even a minute each for them, because it's just the way it is. That's why I try and bring you in at questions like half an hour ago. So you have to get in on the questions early, because we really want to hear from you. So Paddy, maybe address a few things here, and I suppose a quick call to action for what needs to be done in less than a minute, because we're struggling for time.
Look, I think I'm also not sitting there saying renewables tomorrow is the answer for everything. I think we need to continue to focus at developing renewables as fast as possible. Even for Sudan, please think, what is going to be more easily implementable. Cost of capital is the same. Putting rooftops, batteries, not just for one light bulb, but for a reasonable quality of life. Technology has moved on. I think the big issue, I encourage everybody to learn, to go and acquire knowledge about what has happened in the last 18 months, how much further the world has got, the technology has improved, the costs have come down. What is easier than going and deploying that or putting a huge amount of investment in 36 months developing well fields, another 28, sorry, my apologies. And then in another, I don't know how many months, building a power plant, running cables over thousands of kilometers. Come on, I'm sorry. I think you really do need to get an understanding of where we are today in the world with technology, the solutions that are available, the diversity of solutions. And that is what we need to focus on. And by the way, and it's not one size that fits for all.
Yes.
I think they're all different solutions for different countries at different stages of development.
Osama, I know you have a big decarbonization report coming out. We haven't had time to talk about that, but hopefully people can access that. But a quick few closing words, because we've got to run it now.
So I just want to pick up on this, that we have diversified solution. And I think the challenge is huge for any one entity or for any one solution. That's why I think renewables is important, but still, renewables alone will not satisfy the energy needs of the world. The world needs to grow, so it needs more energy. That's why we need to produce all sources of energy in a responsible and more sustainable way. Renewables and other sources.
Helima, a closing word of action from you.
I mean, just not to be complacent on the supply risks that are being posed by this war.
Carlos, the absolute closing word, sorry.
Transformation is disruptive. We have to recognize that. We have to build safety nets. Those safety nets may be rooftop solar. In some places, they may be gas. Think about the entire world. Think about what it's going to be necessary to do for those people that don't have access to energy, because that is going to be critical to our stability and success in the future.
And indeed, the challenges will probably continue for the year to come and the foreseeable future. But again, there's so much that is going on. I think that's the optimistic side of it, and dealing with those challenges, and which we will. I think we see time and time again, this is a resilient business, and the people in it do come up with the solutions. We have to leave it there. I really want to thank you, Paddy, Osama. Thank you so much, Helima, and Carlos. Again, thank you so much.